Hey everyone, welcome to our crypto meetup in the Metaverse. Today we have with us Vanessa Harris. Hey Vanessa, great to have you.
Hey, it's wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much for taking out the time. So Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So, as you mentioned, my name is Vanessa. I've been in product leadership at big tech now for more than 2 decades, but just recently, the last few years, took a step into Web3 to lead product in Web3, and so I've really gotten deep into crypto, into blockchain, and I do believe that Web3, in particular, some of the properties that it brings around true ownership and the ability to share in the value that's created, are the future, and we're very, very early in that future. So I'm excited to have a conversation about this, and look forward to hopefully more in the future where we can really dive into some deep topics here.
Yeah, definitely. We totally love that. So today our topic is crypto, the crypto economy in general, and the things that are taking place in the crypto economy. So we all know with the like Web3, crypto is central to Web3, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you can kind of distinguish those. So oftentimes when people say crypto, what they really mean is the crypto coin that they can track on the marketplace that goes up and goes down. Those coins are built on a blockchain. There's different types of blockchains. Maybe we'll get into that. But that's what people tend to talk about crypto. I approach it more from a technology and societal impact perspective. And so when I use the words Web3, a lot of that may be based on crypto and blockchains, but it's broader in intent to cover not only the specifics of the coins and the tokens, but the incentives created around it, how we interact as communities, governance for those communities, and then the type of systems that we'll end up building into the future. One of the canonical examples I often like to use is that we've seen with Web 2, a lot of the influence and profits have centralized around a few large organizations. And they've added tremendous value. There's no doubt about that. But they've also been the only ones that are receiving that value. And Web3 is an opportunity to take a different approach to that and to build it in a community-centered way, in a way that everyone gets that value and everyone can share in that value. And it's very early. I think if you were to compare it, it's probably early 90s to the internet. And back then, just getting online was a big deal. Having a website was a big deal. They were still hashing out a lot of the details about what's the protocol and what can protocols do. There were the browser wars, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got a lot of that to look forward to. We're extremely early in Web3 and in crypto. I would argue a lot of the protocols that underlie some of the blockchains and the platforms for your crypto coins. A lot of work still to do on those.
Right, right. Totally. I totally agree with you on that point. Web3 is a bigger concept than just crypto or blockchain. Definitely the technology is at the core, but you never know how we're going to progress as time moves on. So to talk about the crypto markets in general, we all know like we are in a bear market. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people are saying, all right, who are skeptics, this is it for crypto. The bubble has bursted and, you're never going to, it is going to take another 10, 15 years to sort of roll on from here. Or, a lot of people are saying a lot of things. So what do you think about the current scenario in the market? In the crypto economy?
Yeah, I guess before I jump into that, I do want to say that anything I say here is not financial advice. I don't
Yeah,
have
I
a
should have
crystal
said that.
ball. I don't know what's going to happen. And if someone tells you absolutely they do know what's going to happen, that's always a good chance for you to be skeptical and
Yeah,
question them.
right.
Like any market here, we have cycles. The stock market has cycles. The crypto market has some pretty dramatic cycles. As an asset class, it tends to be a lot more volatile. So it's not uncommon to have 60, 70, 80% drawdowns in the assets. I think Bitcoin has been declared dead for the last 13 years. And they always like to show all the different news articles that come out year after year of Bitcoin being dead. And yet it's gone from being practically worthless to, now it's sitting just under 24,000. And we're, with the view of short-term history, looking at 24,000 saying, oh my goodness, it's lost most of its value. It's going to zero. This whole thing is just a scam. It's never going to work out. And I think, that's a natural reaction when you see this level of volatility. The approach that I like to take is less from what's the price today and more from what are the kinds of technologies that are building, and what's the value that the technology holds inherently in it, and does it offer something different that previous technologies didn't offer? And from that perspective, I'm tremendously bullish on the concept of crypto and the concept of Web3, because there are challenges that society has today that this is a true solution for. And I'll just touch on Bitcoin briefly, because I think that's probably one that most people are familiar with.
Yeah.
The value that's being proposed for it by many players in the Bitcoin space is that it's a store of value. Now, what is a store of value? Historically, we've talked about gold or, maybe a different kind of precious metal. It used to be that our fiat currencies were tied to gold. And for those who aren't familiar, fiat is basically just the name for currencies like the US dollar or the pound or the euro that is created by the government. There's a lot of theory in there in terms of how it actually works and in practice what's happening and what a dollar is. It's not necessarily a store of value. And so that's a value proposition that I think Bitcoin has that's tremendous, that we'll need going forward. And maybe ultimately it's not Bitcoin that provides it, but something like that is needed as an example of a technology.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting. And that's something people have to research themselves a lot. So as Vanessa said, nothing we say today in this meetup is financial advice. Do your due diligence, and no one knows exactly what's going to happen. So yeah, moving on to the next question. So is there a correlation between the stock indices, the economy in general, and crypto and the crypto economy?
Well, we're definitely seeing that that's the case. And I think if you look historically, the correlation has gone up over time. And Bitcoin, for example, is more correlated with the stock market now than it was, say, 5-10 years ago. It's interesting to me to see that, because a lot of the things that people have talked about Bitcoin around it being an inflation hedge, and then inflation is now almost 10% if you believe the official numbers in the US, and Bitcoin is down from its all-time highs. So you could look at that and you could question and say, what's going on? Is it actually an inflation hedge? Is it decoupled from the stock market? All of those kinds of questions. And I think as you unpack it, it's interesting to note what regulators have done. So in particular, around the Bitcoin ETF, and ETF is an exchange-traded fund that makes Bitcoin accessible for anyone on traditional brokerage. And I think there've been a couple dozen now applications that the SEC has turned down. But what's fascinating isn't that they've turned those applications down, but that they've actually approved ETFs in the futures market, which allows for a little bit more, let's say, manipulation of Bitcoin. And so I think that brings in a dynamic that we haven't seen up until now, where you've got these big players with now tools to move the market in particular directions and take different kinds of bets that they didn't have before. And so, yeah, I would expect, whether or not it's directly correlated with the stock market, that we'll see different kinds of volatility than we used to in the past. It's not just a scarcity crunch that we're going to be looking at, but it's also large financial institutions and how they're looking to profit off the asset, which is not necessarily buy and hold, as many folks maybe here in the retail sector are doing.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's not very simple. These things are complex and they need a lot of research and explaining to do. But to talk about something more simpler, there's Bitcoin and there are all the other coins. So I believe every other coin except Bitcoin is called altcoin. Is that right?
The Bitcoin maxis would like you to believe that. So there's a lot of positioning that's going on here. Bitcoin was one of the first successful, coins. Definitely one of the first on the blockchain, but it was not the first crypto coin. I mean, there were ones before it that had different pros and cons. And so the Bitcoin community likes to position it like that because it gives Bitcoin essentially a level of esteem.
Right.
If you look at Bitcoin, the technology, one of the things that's very interesting about it is how relatively simple it is compared to a lot of the other coins. And they have a scheme we'll get into a bit more about proof of work, but they have one of the largest mining networks out there. And so it's definitely an asset from Bitcoin's perspective. It is, I forget what it is now. It's probably 600, 700 billion in terms of market cap for Bitcoin. So it's a reasonably large asset class. A lot of people are invested in it, from institutions to other players. And so in that regard, it sets itself apart from the acceptance perspective in society from many other coins. But to call all the other coins altcoins, I think does a disservice to the level of innovation that's happening in those other spaces. Bitcoin does one thing, it does one thing really well, in my opinion, which is the ability to store value, transfer it transparently, to verify it on the blockchain, to allow people to own their coins in a way that's distributed across the world that no single actor can circumvent. And I think that's tremendously valuable. Other coins like Ethereum or Cardano or Solana have a different value prop. And I think they're solving different problems than Bitcoin is solving. And so I would question the characterization of these as altcoins. They're just different projects, different coins.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'll agree on that point that these are not just altcoins. Like these are different innovations as Web3 develops. Because earlier we weren't into that Web3 phase, the Web3 wasn't so mainstream. People didn't believe in it. They saw it as a, they saw it as an asset class. So maybe calling blockchain the most valuable coin made sense. But now we'll have more use cases, which maybe even, these coins, arguably called as altcoins, would be perfect for such use cases. Say, for example, DAOs, or as we say, like Ethereum, as you're saying, the scalability in Ethereum, the platform that Ethereum has for developers. It's slowly and steadily sort of coming in terms of a market cap as well. It's it is number two, but some people argue that it will be number one given the use case it has. So what do you think about Ethereum and the changes that are taking place in its infrastructure?
Yeah, so let's first spend a little time talking about Ethereum and what it is and how it's different than Bitcoin. So one of the key innovations that Ethereum brought was this idea of a smart contract. And if you think about Bitcoin, what you can really do with Bitcoin is a few small set of things. You can store it, you can buy it, and you can hold it, and you can transfer it. And that by itself is pretty powerful in the context of a pseudonymous currency that can't be disrupted by any single actor. That's powerful. That's great. Bitcoin doesn't have the notion of smart contracts, which is something that Ethereum brings, which is the ability to do more complex operations on the blockchain, still in a very decentralized fashion that's not controlled by intermediaries. So I'll give you, an example of a smart contract, borrowing and lending through services like Aave. What they will allow you to do is to post collateral, typically it's over collateralized, into a smart contract, and then to borrow a different kind of collateral. So you could do something like put your Ethereum into the smart contract and take out USDC. USDC is a stable coin, and maybe you're going to use those dollars somewhere else. And now the smart contract really brokers that interaction. There's no human, there's no banker. And once it hits your liquidation point, it'll just go and liquidate. And there's no one that can control it or turn it off. And this notion that you can start building more complex applications on the blockchain in a decentralized fashion is something that Ethereum really pioneered to a large degree. And so that's a tremendous value as you look at the financial system that we have and how we can rewrite it from the ground up to remove a lot of the intermediaries, to bring transparency into the system. People like to agitate and say, well, a lot of the cryptocurrency invites criminal elements. Actually, you'd have to be stupid as a criminal to use a Bitcoin or Ethereum because it's all public on the blockchain and traceable. And so a lot of what we see happening in traditional finance, or now kind of the folks who've bridged traditional and crypto, is that there are transactions that are happening off the books that people aren't aware of, and surprise, you discover them and bad things are happening. And the blockchain largely obviates a lot of that.
Yeah. Right. The transparency is the fundamental pillar of the blockchain. And talking about Ethereum again, as we are seeing, as the event has been called as the merge. So a lot of hype going around the merge. It's taking place right now. So what is the difference? So I believe something is happening in terms of the core technology in Ethereum. We are moving away from the proof of work, and it is moving to proof of stake now. So essentially, that means there will be no more mining, and which makes it a lot sustainable and scalable. But yeah, then there comes this concept of proof of stake. So what exactly is proof of stake? How is it different from proof of work? And what does it actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic question. I think there's lots of different consensus mechanisms. Consensus mechanisms are basically just ways to agree on which block is correct and who gets to mint the blocks, and to ensure the integrity of the blockchain. And so if you look at Bitcoin, they have something that's called proof of work, which is basically very powerful machines running to solve a mathematical problem. And the machine that gets to solve it gets rewarded with some Bitcoin. And Ethereum has a similar model currently. The specifics of the algorithms they're solving is slightly different. It's more GPU based than ASIC based. But that's, not really something you need to fully understand. I think what's interesting to understand is right now, Ethereum has the same concept of all these miners all around the world that are busy mining. So they're pushing in compute power in order to secure the network, to ensure that the consensus protocol works correctly on the blockchain. And what Ethereum is doing is switching that from a consensus mechanism that requires really a lot of energy and a lot of hardware and equipment over to something called proof of stake, where it's more algorithmic, it's more based on the kind of interactions that you have, and using validators across the network to secure the network. And different networks do this differently. Roughly, if you have a validator, it has a certain amount of stake, it has a certain ability to produce blocks in the ecosystem, and people would delegate their crypto to it. What does that mean? Basically, you say, okay, I'm going to help secure the network. As part of securing the network, I'm going to give this particular validator, I'm going to stake my Ethereum with them. And so their global stake grows. They're responsible for running the network and producing blocks and validating blocks. And I get a small reward for it. And it's changed with Ethereum. I think at the beginning it was, above 10%. Right now, if I'm correct, it's roughly 4.5% that you could, quote unquote, earn from proof of stake. Proof of stake tends to be inflationary. And so what people will do is even chains like Cardano, which have a hard cap, they'll have some coins that are held back, and they'll use those to pay out the rewards for proof of stake. And these rewards are important because it encourages people to stake to secure the network. And it also gives people a reason to kind of engage with that chain because you're getting those rewards. Now, what Ethereum's done is very interesting, is they have a setup where, based on the amount of usage that happens on the blockchain, they're burning some of the coins there. So on one side, they're inflating through the staking rewards, and then on the other side, through usage, they're burning it. So they've kind of got two forces acting on the total supply of Ethereum. And what's interesting about what's happening with the merge, where they're moving from proof of work to proof of stake, is that the number of coins, new coins that will be minted, is going to dramatically reduce. I think it's a factor of 10 roughly, because they would require that for mining fees for all these miners. Now that you don't have miners, you just have validators. The amount of equipment and hardware costs, etc., is dramatically reduced. So that'll add some efficiencies to the consensus mechanism securing the network. That's a lot.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm sure you explained it pretty well, and folks will be able to understand that. But there are voices in the crypto community which are saying that the transfer from proof of work to proof of stake would inherently make Ethereum more centralized in nature, because there will be some folks who have the stake and who basically will run the show.
Yeah.
And which is in turn against the concept of Web3 decentralization and blockchain. What do you say about that?
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting concern. One thing I'll point out is that we're still so early. Even Bitcoin, we're 13 years in. And so anyone who claims to know what the long-term impact of different consensus mechanisms is, they're really fooling themselves, because we don't know. So much of blockchain and crypto is built on game theory, on different incentives, and potentially large outside actors who may choose to attack it. Let me explain roughly how I've heard the argument expressed. So in Bitcoin, you have miners. Miners are given rewards in Bitcoin for blocks that they create, but they have large costs in terms of running the mining, getting electricity, et cetera, et cetera. So some portion of their mining reward will be sold to folks. So the Bitcoin will be sold, someone else will end up with it, and then the miners will keep a portion. So it's less centralizing into a small set of miners' hands over time. The network itself requires people to work and to spend money to maintain. Whereas proof of stake, all you have to do is stake it, and it accrues over time. And so that aspect creates a more centralizing force, because you're not requiring those people who are earning to have anything but money. Now, the counter argument to that goes, well, you need a lot of money to run a Bitcoin mining network, so you already have that money. I think it's just slightly different inherent in the system to proof of stake, is that it's centralizing, whereas proof of work has exogenous components. And it might still be centralizing if you step back from the Bitcoin network, but from the Bitcoin network itself, it's less centralizing. Now, there's another interesting thing that's happening with the merge. With Ethereum, you're actually required to have 32 ETH in order to become a validator and to delegate your stake and start earning on it. So we see a lot of players like Lido. And what Lido does is says, okay, maybe not everyone has 32 ETH, not everyone wants to go through all that complexity. Just give your ETH to us. We'll give you something called STETH, and we'll compound for you, and you'll kind of earn that staking reward on it. Now, folks like Lido and Rocket Pool and others, they essentially become the points of centralization in the network, because they control large amounts of stake and can direct it. And I think currently Lido has 33% of all the stake out there. This will change as the merge happens, because there's a lot of Ethereum right now that isn't staked because there's this uncertainty. It's unclear when you'll ever be able to get your Ethereum back. Will the merge happen this year? It's been promised for years. But once the merge happens, once people are able to stake and withdraw, I think some of that will even out a little bit, and we'll see a large amounts of Ethereum still being staked. And hopefully the share of any particular player like a Lido will drop. So we'll at least have more players who control the blockchain.
Right. I actually have a lot of questions to ask you right now, but we are a bit short on time. So definitely, hopefully we can do that some other time. So the next question I'll ask you is around what safety tips should a regular person like me, I'm not a pro, right? I'm scared. Everyone is a skeptic, is susceptible to threats on the internet, on the computer. So what safety tips would you recommend for the average person who just invests in crypto, isn't very pro, and has their money staked out there? So how do you recommend being safe out there?
This could be a whole 30-minute to an hour episode by itself. The first thing I would say is spend time to research and understand what you're investing in and understand how you're investing in it. And so we'll have a little conversation now, but before you throw in thousands of dollars, just be diligent with that, because one thing that's different with crypto than the traditional financial system is there's no way to get your crypto back after someone's stolen it. Short of, crazy FBI things and stuff, people coming in and salvaging your crypto. But typically one property of the blockchain is that it's irrevocable. And so once a transaction is sent and confirmed on the blockchain, typically it can't be revoked. So it's something to be aware of. It's not like you can call up your bank and they'll recover it for you. Now there's two things that are important to understand. The first of which is the notion of where are you custodying your crypto? You hear some people use the phrase, not your keys, not your coins. This basically refers to who owns the private keys to your crypto. We don't have time to dig into private keys and blockchain and how all of that works, but basically just think of ownership of your coins. Now, one model is you buy your crypto on Coinbase or Kraken or one of those exchanges, and they really own the keys to your coins, and you're trusting them with your coins. You're trusting that they, won't run away with it, that they won't get hacked, et cetera, et cetera. And we've seen some large CeFi players, and unfortunately, get into some tough situations lately. And so the alternative to that is to do something called self-custody. This is a more complicated approach, but it means that you are completely in charge of your crypto, but also responsible for it. And so that's where you need all the good security habits. So if you choose to self-custody, then, there's a whole slew of choices you'll have there. But let's first start with where most people are likely to start, which is you're going to buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, on an exchange. Make sure it's a reputable exchange. Ideally, if they're publicly listed, that's a good sign. But it's not always, a guarantee that they're going to be secure. When you set up your account, make sure you have two-factor authentication, which is typically you have an email and a password, and then you have some other, whether it's an SMS to your phone or you use an authenticator app like Google Authenticator. I strongly, strongly recommend that you use an authenticator app if it's given the option, and you don't let people override it with your phone number. What we see happen often is something called a SIM swap, which is an attack that people do on your phone. They'll call up your cell phone provider, they'll do some social engineering, and hey, presto, now they have your phone number, now they have your 2FA, and they can transfer your crypto off of Coinbase. And like I said before, once it's gone, it's gone. It's gone forever. So that's the most basic step if you choose to custody with someone else. If you choose to self-custody, understand the difference between a cold wallet and a hot wallet. Hot wallets are typically where you have a browser extension or a mobile app, and your keys are kind of stored on a device that is connected to the internet. Cold wallets tend to be things like a ledger or a Trezor or a cold card, where the keys themselves are air-gapped away from your computer, and it requires interaction with a hardware device in order to sign anything. And that creates an additional layer of security. I'm going to pause there because I know we're kind of running low on time, and see if there's any particular aspect you wanted me to dive into a little bit deeper.
Yeah, so definitely safety is a very important point that we will hopefully talk more about in the future. So where does the crypto community thrive? Is it Twitter mainly? Is it Slack? So where can you find people to follow? So where can you be updated? And how can you engage with the community? What's the best way for that?
Yeah, so I'd offer a sense of caution here. One thing that happens a lot in crypto is the kind of echo chamber effect, where you get a lot of people who are into a particular coin and you follow all of those people and you think it's amazing and nothing is wrong with it. So Twitter is a fantastic place to find people, but just be aware that you'll have those echo chambers and you need to be diligent to break out. Discord is very popular, especially with NFT projects in crypto. But again, be careful because there's lots of opportunities through these platforms to scam. You'll see, anyone who's got any number of followers in Twitter normally has a doppelganger that's following them around, trying to scam their audience. They'll make a profile that looks exactly the same as the actual account, and they'll send you a direct message and start a conversation. And then at some point they'll ask you to send them crypto. Maybe it's an investment thing they're going to do or something else. So be very, very careful of that. Never send anyone your private keys. Never send anyone your crypto if they ask for it online. But there's a couple good publications. I like Bankless is a great way to start to learn. They're very deep into Ethereum. They have their own particular view, but there's lots of great information there. Another place I like on YouTube is Digital Asset News. A guy named Rob runs that, and he's just got a fantastically, calming, great perspective. He helps people understand from the ground up how to get involved in crypto without all of the hype. Something to be aware of. Anyone who's a quote unquote influencer likely wants you to buy a certain coin. Sometimes they get preferential deals on you and they'll dump that coin on you as soon as you buy it. So be very careful. If someone says this coin is going to the moon, stay away, find a better source for your information because it's likely they have some incentive to tell you that.
Right. So I usually see a lot of YouTube videos and sometimes I take them seriously. Oh, this guy is saying this and maybe this is what I should do. But yeah, people should keep this in mind.
Yeah, someone else I'd recommend if you're looking for more of the tech side is a guy named Hiroshi. And he does great technical deep dives and is also of the same, he's not going to shill anything. It's not a pump and dump. He just talks about projects and technology, very down to earth guy. So he's someone else I trust with the information I'm getting in from him.
Right. That was a very detailed discussion about we got an overview, but yeah, it's a lot for a newbie to take in. Hopefully we can do something more like this in the future and engage the community in the metaverse and with videos like this. So if folks want to reach to you, so what is the best way they can reach to you?
Yeah, so there's two places to find me. First is on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Technology Poet. I talk about crypto. I talk about all sorts of things. I try and keep it light sometimes. The other place you can find me is I do run a YouTube channel called Just Crypto. So youtube.com/justcrypto, where I tend to speak more to creators of different projects to try and understand, the humans who are driving us forward in this industry. It's not a TA channel. It's not a, influencer pump and dump channel. It's just looking at technology and people in the crypto world. So we'd love to see you on there. If you did see me from this video, from the metaverse discussion, definitely jump in and just say hi. I'm always happy to answer questions and to, spread what I know about crypto. I'd also, let everyone know I'm still early. We're all learning. This industry is new. So if you have information that I don't have, I'd love to hear it. I'm always open to learning from anyone in this space.
All right. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for this great discussion. So folks, if you want to reach out to Vanessa, reach out to her on her Twitter, or you can watch videos on her YouTube channel as well. And hopefully we should get Vanessa again for one of the discussions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Bye.